Alrighty, how's everyone doing? Um, Coming in to share my strong card for the week, which to remind everyone was my train card and the share your story card. So I've been doing a lot of reflecting, and it's kind of come down to today to share the story. I was kind of wrestling with whether I should write it out, and I don't have the patience to write it out, and I just am more comfortable talking about it. So I think before I get into my story, I think it's important to kind of give a little backstory of kind of me and my religion and faith and things like that. And I was raised in a Methodist upbringing and family, and my parents are both very religious. My father's very religious, and but it didn't seem like he became really religious until later on in my childhood. So I'd be interested to hear about what his story was. Of what kind of sparked him, but we always went to church on the key days and things like that, and so I guess you could say I was a non-practicing Methodist. And one of the things that always kind of turned me off with the whole Methodist practice was just how formal it is, and just how rigid it is, and how strict it is. And I always wanted things to be a little more free-flowing, and I just didn't ever see that. So I went down, and yes, we're doing this during a thunderstorm with thunder and lightning and things like that during a beautiful Memorial Day weekend, which was gorgeous all day, which is kind of interesting, and it's kind of thundering and storming out right now. But I did mission work when I was in high school. We went down to Appalachia and did several service projects down there with some amazing people. Ed Hoke, who was my youth pastor. Amazing individual. Hopefully he'll see this. He definitely was a big influence in my life. My father went down. My dad went down with me, a few times on those trips as well. And so that's kind of like the backstory of kind of who I am and from my faith and religion. And fast forwarding from out of high school till now, or till 6 months ago, religion was never really in my life. I never went to church on Easter, Easter, Christmas Eve, any of those, particular days. And my story really kind of starts back in October. I believe it was Hurricane Matthew. I think it was. I think Matthew was the hurricane, but it went through Haiti. And I have an amazing life partner, Marianne, and she's filming this right now. She's done a lot of mission work in her life, and has brought her to all parts of the world, down in Tanzania to create an orphanage, and down in Haiti on one trip. And we were just sitting over having dinner. I'm sure it was over some gluttony and things like that, and probably some excess of wine and food and overindulgence and a lot of different things, and that's kind of what we used to partake in. And started looking at the TV and saw the hurricane come, the devastation from the hurricane that was going on in Haiti. And I looked over at Marianne, or Mare, I'll refer to her as Mare for the rest of the video, and I looked at her and I said, I think it's time to go to Haiti. And I didn't expect a quick response, but she immediately looked at me and she goes, "Okay, let's go." I'm like, "Well, shouldn't we think about this?" She goes, "No, we're going, let's go." She goes, "How about spring break? We can go and over my spring break." So that was really kind of the whole. It was a very quick conversation about it, and we didn't really talk about it much after that until about a month and a half afterwards. But reflecting back on all the things that have happened to me since, I can tell that was my starting point on my journey of where I'm at now, and that was God dumping the big old jigsaw puzzle called life on me, and saying, "Here you go, here's your starting pieces. Like, whether you like it or not, you're going to be exposed to me, and whether you choose to follow me or not, that's up to you." And I was oblivious to it at the time. So went through the holidays, went through everything, and then January finally got off our butts and got our tickets to go down to Haiti. And it was really weird once we made that commitment. We didn't really tell anybody that we were going. A lot of people out there that we were going, but just everything just kind of started flooding in as far as donations, and and everything getting ready to go down there, to a point where we had to buy all these extra suitcases just to get all of the donated items down there. When people heard that we were going down to Haiti, and we're blessed that we had, we have a lot of people close to us that want to be a part of that process with us. And so we got down to Haiti, and my first time getting off the plane, just kind of seeing what I was walking into in a third world nation was really eye-opening. Nerve-wracking, like I scared, nervous, just flooded with emotions, not knowing what to expect. And then we pull up to the Mission of Hope compound, and I didn't really realize what we were getting into with Mission of Hope at this point in time. I thought we were going to be coming into something more of what my mission work had been in the past, and that's going down and building houses or additions or electrical work, things like that. I didn't realize exactly how faith-based oriented and how much of a Christian organization Mission of Hope is. And I quickly found out when we got to the compound and got off the bus, and we were starting to unpack all of our donations. And one of the interns, Amanda Maples, hopefully she'll see this as well, came over and said, "All right, let's do a little prayer over all the donations that came down." I was like, "Prayer? What? Like, these are donations. Like, where do we go?" No. So I still was very unclear of what was going on. And as I stayed there at Mission of Hope for the first couple days, it became very clear that there was definitely a backstory to everything that was going on down in Haiti. And of course, looking back on it now, I can say that. But at the point in time, I had no clue what was headed my way. And we were able to come across some amazing individuals down in Haiti who really kind of kickstarted my journey. We had 3 amazing village champions, Eves, Junior, and the real quiet one. He was kind of the silent but deadly guy that just kind of sat in the corners there and just made sure everything was going right and made sure we were on the right path. But 3 amazing individuals, and then we had another amazing individual with us as well, who was a connection from a previous mission trip from another individual I'll talk to you about here in a little bit. But his name is Andy, and I know he'll see this because he's in the group, the Be Strong group, and he's a friend of mine on Facebook. So I know, Andy, you'll see this, and hopefully you'll enjoy the story here. So those 4 were really, paramount in taking us into the village of Bercy, and it's a very unique village, as I'm sure all 12 villages that Mission of Hope works with down there. But in the village of Bercy, we were there for 5 days, and it resides right on the Atlantic Ocean. Amazing views of the Atlantic. Taking a look at where we're at in the Western world, I mean, you're talking about $1 million views. But down in Bercy, I mean, you're talking about a matter of survival, of being close to the water and close to the ocean and being able to do all those things you need to. They don't look at it from the way we do up in the Western world. And so they brought us into their village and introduced us to some amazing individuals. And I mean, there's way too many to mention in here. But there were really two situations there that really kind of hit home with me, that I really got a deep connecting in my heart with. The first one was Marie Claude, who was a great lady. Get a little choked up here. She was amazing. She was sick. She had some stomach issues. Amazing, striking eyes. Probably the most beautiful eyes I've ever seen on anyone in my life. Very captivating, but she was super humble. And the company that she owns, or I guess it's the company she owns, But she works up in the mountains, and she breaks rock down into gravel and sells that to other people. Just the way of income down in Haiti is completely different than anything that us up here could ever relate to if you've never been down there to experience a third world country. So after talking with her, we quickly realized as a team that we need to help her, and so we were able to work through the local church and our village champions to be able to get her over to the Mission of Hope clinic to get seen, so they can see what's wrong with her and what her ailments are, and they gave her some antibiotics and some other medicine to be able to try to make things a little bit better for her. Part of the issue is that they don't have any type of purified water down there, so it just really kind of wreaks havoc on the internal system within our bodies, with some parasites and things of that nature. So I think that's what she was battling. But I didn't really get the connection at that point, that we had to go to the church and things like that. I was just like, well, why can't we just give her the money? It's like, well, everything down in Haiti is all about faith and religion and or believe in something. And I didn't really understand what that was. Now I do. But at that point I had no clue what that was all about. So that was really the first person that kind of struck a chord. Actually, there's three individuals there that really kind of struck a chord in Haiti. The second one was a young man named Michael. Super intelligent individual. He was a painter, or is a painter, and did some construction work. He built his own house in Haiti. It's probably the nicest house that we visited. And he was young. He was probably maybe not even 21, maybe 20. Spoke perfect English. His goal was to be a translator in his life, and that's what he wanted to do. Michael, hopefully you get to see this, and if you do get to see this, you have a lot more things waiting for you than that. I'm confident there's big things for you. Just got to dig deep and find out what they are. I'd love to help you with it if I can. And he was someone who wanted to be a Christian. He wanted to go to church, and he wanted to do all those things, but he hadn't given his life over to Christ. Reflecting back, I kind of see like a young me. That just kind of hit me as I was talking about it, so sorry about the emotions. But I think that was probably, God and Jesus telling me that, hey, this was a young you, and you didn't take the commitment or the jump. And that was just one of the signs that were out there. So he was a great individual. Didn't spend much time with them, but just as you could tell, had an amazing impact. So that was the second person that had a really big impact on me down there. The third person, I want to say person, is more of a group that had a huge impact on me, was an amazing family. I'm starting to cry like a baby here. Just an amazing family that we got to know over the 3 days that we were down there. Man, we were introduced to a beautiful baby, 15-day-old Haitian baby, Miriam, which I thought was really odd that there was a beautiful Haitian baby that was named Miriam, which is a very Jewish name, in a culture that is very French dominated. It just didn't make any sense with me, but I'll get to the connection a little bit later on things. But we got to spend some time with them, and got to go see some of their riches and go up into the coconut groves and get fresh coconuts from Miriam's, I guess it'd be grandfather-in-law, I guess. Mm-hmm. He took us up there as a group, and our translator and village champions were saying that of all the time they've ever been doing this, that's the only time that they've ever seen someone get me and take out to their farms and be treated like that. So that was a pretty amazing experience. Of course, all the village kids that were around the whole time we were there was amazing. So those were the three real individuals within the in Bercy that really had a striking impact on me. But there were a lot of other people along the way that had a lot of connections with me. That kind of led up to my story, which probably the biggest person. Gonna cry like a baby again. And I definitely know he'll see it. Nick Buchanan. He's an amazing guy. We had we were fortunate to be able to be paired up with him and his two amazing kids. It just opened up a lot of things for me. I think I think it was kind of tearing at my heart a little bit and trying to rip it open a little bit. You succeeded. You definitely did it. And Nick was pretty quiet and reserved on the first couple days, and then on Wednesday, when we were there, we were talking to, I think we were talking to Michael. Was it Michael we were talking about? We were talking to Michael, and he just revealed this story that was just like blue. I mean, I'm not going to say the story here. That for him to share if he'd like to, but it was the first time I've ever heard someone tell their story of Jesus coming into life, and like it just blew my doors off of what all happened to him and what he went through. My revelation of coming into everything, and my story, what I'm telling you right now, it's not deep, dark, or anything like that. I mean, it's very joyous, it's very uplifting, and but I can see where deep in depths of people, when people get in depression and stuff like that, how the devil and the bad forces out there in the world can take hold of you and do some dumb things that you might think that are the right thing to do at the point in time. But then seeing Jesus come through and saving people, it's just a beautiful situation. And so I really kind of reflect on that a lot with Nick. And from that point forward, it seems like our relationship kind of changed. I think with Marianne as well, as far as her relationship with Nick, really kind of changed with the whole team. And so on that Wednesday, we had all those things going on. We had, we met with all those individuals we met with on Wednesday, but we also met with some other individuals on Wednesday, which, reflecting back on how things went, I can really pinpoint that Wednesday for me, I don't know if the day of reckoning is really kind of the right word for it, but it's, I can say it was a struggle of good versus evil within me, of, not that I had to have any Satan or anything like that in me, but I could definitely feel the coattails being pulled one way or the other. Do I want to continue to do what I was doing? And that's just living life to excess and just going out and, eating out in restaurants 7 days a week and spending this crazy amounts of money on things that don't really matter, and just, not paying attention to the big word, the bigger things in life? Or do I want to follow the path of Christ and follow the path of Jesus and God and go in that direction? And I'm thoroughly convinced that Wednesday was my day of reckoning on that, and that's why I call it the day of reckoning for me, because I can definitely feel struggles going both ways. There were some very uplifting stories of seeing Miriam and hearing Nick's story of what saved him. But there were also some very deep, dark conversations that we had with individuals that day as well. Probably one of the most profound conversations we had with a gentleman. I don't even know what his name was, but we came into the village after lunch and parked the van kind of by a shade tree, and there was a gentleman there selling some sodas and things like that to the kids, the village kids. And there was another gentleman that was there with him that just wasn't saying much. He was just kind of sitting there. And so, as we did whenever we saw people, we started talking to them and trying to find out what about their faith and things like that. And the gentleman sitting down selling the sodas, he didn't want to talk really much at all. But the other gentleman, got really, really vocal. And we were in the shade, and there was, there were probably between the village champions, myself, Marianne, Nick, and everybody around, there were probably 8 or 10 of us talking to this particular gentleman. And we talked for him for a good, probably 3 hours. Mm-hmm. Say conservatively, probably 3 hours. Might have been a little bit longer than that. And he was really trying to squash down all the good that Mission of Hope was doing in Haiti. And of course, everything that he talked about, there was a rebuttal to. But I was standing right next to him pretty much the whole time. And I, at the time, I couldn't describe it. I couldn't tell you what I was feeling. But I definitely was feeling something. And I just standing next to him, I had an unbelievable weight. I could feel it pressing down on my shoulders and just pushing on my whole back. And the conversation was heavy at times. I mean, to a point where I had to get away and, kind of walk around the van and break away from the conversations just because it was just so emotionally draining. And when I got away from him, I felt the whole weight lift off my shoulders. And then I'd go back into the conversation, stand next to him again, and the minute I got within, 2 or 3 feet of him, that weight just started pressing back down on me again. And we didn't really come to any resolution during that conversation. But on our way back to the compound, Junior, our village champion, revealed to us that this gentleman was a witch doctor, and he practiced voodoo. And spent my 1 week in Haiti, I can tell you, at least I feel that people down there believe in one of 3 things. They're Christians, and they definitely follow the Lord. They practice voodoo and witchcraft. Or they believe there's something else out there bigger than them. They just have no idea what it is, and they haven't been turned to one way or the other from either side. But this gentleman was a witch doctor, and he was looking to get out of the voodoo and wanted to turn to Christianity and become a Christian. And he just didn't know how to do it, and there were a lot of inner struggles going on with him. But I could definitely feel the weight of all of his life on my shoulders, and when we were talking to him, and the third thing that happened that day was involved Michael again, and it's weird just how Michael kind of keeps popping up in all of these kind of revelations for me. But he approached us later on in the day when we were over at baby Miriam's house, and that was the day that they asked Marianne to be the godmother. The next day, on Thursday, is the day they asked me to be the godfather, and I'll kind of explain why I think it happened the way that did. I haven't talked to Marianne about this yet either, so she's going to be new to hearing this. And Michael showed up and said that his best friend is possessed, and he needed our help with it. So we left, and we were on our way over there to go talk to one of his best friends. And Junior, again, our village champion, said, no, let's not, go over there, and let's pray about it tonight and see. And so we didn't go talk to him at that point in time. And when we got back to the compound with Mission of Hope to end our day, that's really when things kind of started changing for me a little bit, and I started feeling different. I started feeling a little, kind of tingle, and just felt different. And so, the first prayer I ever did was for Michael's friend, and it turns out that his friend is not possessed, and he has some mental issues and with his brain, and he needs to go up to Canada to get some surgery done to try to cure anything that's out there. And I don't know if it'll ever happen, but I pray for him, that it does. And so I just hope that my prayer, played a little bit of part in that he wasn't possessed, and that's what the other outcome was. But Wednesday night at the compound is when, like, I started making decisions that I'd never made before, and became interested in things I'd never had been interested in before. We finished dinner, and the medical team that we were sharing our rooms with, they said they were going up to the rooftop. There's a beautiful rooftop up on top of the compound that gave you a 360-degree view of everything around Haiti, the mountains down to the ocean. And they said they were going up there for a devotional, and I think that was the first time I ever heard the word devotional. And I looked at Mary Ann, I'm like, well, let's go up with them and do the devotional. She goes, no, that's a devotional. It's there's prayers like that. It's not, you probably wouldn't be interested in that. I'm like, no, let's go up. So, first time I ever went up to something like that, and and I don't know what brought me up there. Well, I do know what brought me up there now. But just kind of sat there, and we talked about some things, and so that was my kind of one of my first turning points, I think, as far as my journey and my story. And then the other night we went to bed, went to sleep, and then Thursday morning, one of the things you have to realize of where we were at, there's no electricity, there's no running water, there's nothing there. We were fortunate at the compound to have electricity from a diesel generator that powered the entire compound. Being a diesel generator, they had to shut that thing down, a few times a day, and so it could cool down. And one of the times they would shut it down is 5 a.m. Every morning, like clockwork, it would shut down. And throughout the night, it really provided white noise background for you, and it really is a kind of a calming effect that allowed you to sleep better in the stifling heat of 85-degree nights and no air conditioning and mosquitoes and bugs and everything. But at 5 a.m., the generator shut off, and it would just become like eerily quiet. And you had about 2 minutes of an eerie, still quietness over you before the rooster started crowing. And on that Thursday, the other kind of backstory on it, as far as with kind of where I, in my bed where I slept, there were steel bunks and mosquito nets, and I had 2 fans, one at my feet and one at my head, but they were both plug-in fans that ran on the power. So whenever, and that would always wake me up in the morning whenever the power would go out or the generator would stop, my fans would stop, and it would just get like stifling, like still, the air would be still and hot and muggy. But on this Thursday, when the power went out, something magical happened, and something just really took over me, and now I know what it is after being in the church for the last month and a half or so. But when the generator went out, I just got like what I thought was a wind just blowing over me, from my head down to my feet, and my head wasn't by the window at all, so it didn't make any sense of where this wind was coming from, and nobody was up, nobody was behind me. But I just got this wind that blew over me, and I heard a voice saying, "Go to the roof." And so I went to the roof, and it was pitch black. It was probably as black as a closed closet door. Like, you couldn't see anything. You could see some lights from Port-au-Prince in the far distance, but where we were around, you couldn't see anything. You couldn't see any horizon of the mountains or anything. And this voice directed me to go down to the end of the pavilion, over to the east side of the roof, overlooking the mountain range where the sun was going to come up. And I think sunrise at that point was 6:30. So I was up there for a good hour and a half, and just reflecting on the whole week of what was going on, and everything I'd been faced with, and the sun started, the light started breaking and started coming over the mountains, and I just had this like tingle in my chest and just kind of overtaking my whole body, and just it was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. And I just kind of felt this like arm on my shoulder, or my hand on my shoulder, and just this voice kept telling me, saying it like, it's okay, let go, it's just like, it's okay. And as the sun started coming up, I just started I started taking pictures of the sunrise, the most beautiful sunrise I'd ever seen. And shortly after the sun started, the light started coming up. The sun hadn't crested yet. Mary came over, and she had been on the roof the whole time, I think, but she was down on the other end and kind of doing her thing, and she had no idea I was up there. And so we took some selfies and took some pictures up there on the roof, and then I just turned around and take one more picture of the sunrise. And you couldn't see the sun cresting the mountains at all. Like, but there's this unbelievable orange glow coming over the mountains. And I swear I'd gone back and taken a look at this picture a dozen times, and I didn't see any sun in it. And once we got back to the United States and did our thing, I went back looking through the pictures, and I can relate back now on that Thursday morning sitting on the rooftop. That was when I gave my life to Jesus. And the wind coming over from my head down to my feet, that wasn't wind, that was him breathing over me. Me breathing in his breath and just bringing him inside me. Going up to the roof, that was him holding my shoulder and telling me it's going to be okay and just let go. And there was one other thing that happened up on that roof that morning that was just, I don't know why it happened. I don't know if he even realizes he did or not, but Nick was in the picture again. And because where I was at on the end of the balcony, you could look down to another lower balcony that you could look over in the same place. And as the sun was cresting before Marianne came over, I looked down and I just saw Nick sitting there looking at the same sunrise coming up. And again, reflecting back, it's a lot of reflections in this. I'm convinced that Nick was there watching the same sunrise to make sure Jesus made his whole way into me. And he succeeded. So it was, that was really kind of the, when Christ entered me, and the next day or that day going back into the village of Bercy, it was different. Like, I could just feel it was different. I didn't know any word of gospel to talk about it like that, but I just had a different feeling about me. And we went back to see baby Miriam, and they knew we were coming. We told them we were coming back, so they had put Miriam's mom had put her in her like best Sunday clothes, and just she was beautiful, amazing, clean clothes, clean cashmere blanket, and I remember just sitting there, and this was, they had talked to Marianne about being the godmother, and there were a couple talks throughout about me possibly being the godfather, but at that point when we were there, she said, we want you both to be the godparents. And I still don't know why God sent me down to Haiti. I do know it was to become closer to Him. That book is still unfolding. I don't know if it has something to do with baby Miriam or Michael or something else, or Andy or someone else down there. But I do know that if Thursday morning had never happened to me, I'm pretty sure that they would never ask me to be the godfather, because I had not accepted. They knew that I hadn't accepted. I didn't ever tell them that, but I think they knew that I hadn't accepted, Jesus Christ. So that was really that's kind of the story. What I've learned since then is not to ignore the signs of what he's telling me, and to follow through with what he's telling me. And coming back here to Detroit, there's been a lot of signs that have kind of come my way. I'll share a couple of those with you now. Sorry if I'm getting long-winded, but that's the end of my story. But now I want to share with you some other things. The first one goes back to baby Miriam, and I can tell you there's only one other Miriam I've ever known in my life, and that was the grandmother of my best friend Todd. Only lady I know that was Miriam. And when I first got back, we went to Easter service, and I think one thing I forgot to talk about when we were down in Haiti. Mary Ann and I went down on our own as a couple, and not with the church or anything like that. And we knew there were going to be a couple, youth groups that were there at the same time. But we didn't realize was that both youth groups were going to be from Oakland County here in Michigan, and within 5 miles of where we live. Woodside Church was there, and Kensington was there. And Kensington happens to be the church that Mary Ann is a member of and has been for a long time. And I had never heard of either one of them. So the week we get back from Haiti is Easter weekend. And so I'm working on Friday, and Mary Ann was planning on going to Good Friday service, and I was like, well, I'll meet you there. And she didn't know how I was going to meet her there because I was working, and sure enough, I showed up and was there. And in the meantime, I'd gotten tickets for Easter service, and something was just telling me that I need to go to church, and now I know why. I need to go to church because he was telling me to. So we went to Easter services that weekend, and then the next weekend, on that Sunday, that was probably the first Sunday service I had been to in a church since high school days, since I went with my parents probably. That's how religious I was. But another sign happened to me that day in service. The pastor that had been at Kensington for a long time was leaving, and that was his last service that he was overseeing. And they put up on the screen, they put his whole family's name up there, and one of his daughter's names was Miriam. And that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks when I was like, what are the odds of his daughter being named Miriam? And I didn't think much of it. And then later on that week, or I don't know if it was that week or the week after, but I was at the gym, and I was leaving the gym, and it was probably 11 o'clock at night, and leaving from the gym to our condo, it's maybe 5 or 10 minutes, not a long drive. But I was flipping through the radio stations, and I didn't see anything that was, hear anything that was on that I wanted to listen to. But in my radio, it's an HD radio, so there's second and third channels on almost every station. Like, well, let me just flip over to the HD radio. I've never done it before in my life. I'd never flipped over to HD radio, and that was the first time I ever did it. And lo and behold, when I flipped it over, there was a gentleman on there that was talking about Miriam's Hope. And it turns out the station I switched over to was a Christian station, K-Love, which I didn't even know existed, never even heard of it. And so it's just really, kind of bizarre to me that there were 3 situations involving Miriam within a month, involving a name of someone I'd only known one other in my life in 44 years. So that was the first sign that that I've kind of taken a look at. Still don't know where that sign's taking me or where that's leading to. But the second one involves who's turned out to be a pretty good friend of mine now, Mark Powers. He kind of, I don't say he kind of, but he found Christ almost about the same time I did. He's going through his own struggles and things like that. And one of the songs that since I got back from Haiti, I've gotten really kind of involved in some Christian music and listening to that. It's really inspiring stuff. And I think sometimes I annoy Mary Ann. Sometimes I was bouncing around the house singing and yelling and stuff like that. And but there were two particular songs that I really became fond of, and they were both by Hillsong Worship. And the first one is "What a Beautiful Name It Is," and the second one is "Broken Vessels." Both by them, "Amazing Grace," "Broken Vessels." And later on, I found out that "Broken Vessels" is Mark's favorite song going on right now, and he was recently baptized, and they played that song in the background when he was being baptized, and he didn't know that they were going to play that. But I was getting ready for work one day, and I was listening to the Hillsong Worship while I was getting ready, and on the playlist I had with them, the first two songs would play, and when I got to the third song, it just stopped. And I thought it was kind of weird, and the third song that wouldn't play was "Broken Vessels." And I restarted my phone, kept trying to go back, and it would never play. And so something told me that something was right, so I reached out, sent out a text to Mark, and asked him if he was okay, and yeah, he was okay. But through that conversation, we wound up meeting up, that Sunday for brunch with Mary Ann and myself and Mark, and we both kind of shared our stories and kind of talked about what prompted things with us, and so there's a lot of signs going on right now with me, and I'm not quite sure what all the signs are pointing me to. I just had, I sitting in midweek service on Wednesday. We were sitting there and Broken Vessels played again. And on midweek worship service, it's really more musical. And at the very beginning, though, they played Broken Vessels, and I don't know why, of all the songs they could play, they played that one right after my meet up with Mark and things like that. And so I don't know what that's telling me, but at the same time, I got a pretty clear sign from him saying that I need to be involved in some fashion. I don't know to what extent yet with Boys and Girls Club. So I'm going to be pursuing that this week and seeing what road that leads me down. But I can tell you it's been an amazing journey so far. It's definitely a journey I couldn't have done without Mare, and won't continue to do without Mare. She'll be there by my side the whole time. So that's really my story. Every day I reflect back and I take a look at the trip to Haiti as a starting point, and looking back on that day when we were sitting down having dinner. Everyone kind of laughs about it now, but I always tell everybody that's the day when when God threw the big old jigsaw puzzle of life on my head and told me to start figuring it out, because the path I was going down wasn't working right. And sure enough, one thing I've learned in my brief time going to church now is that Jesus always wins, and you can either try to do it your way or do it His way. But one way or the other, you're eventually going to go to His way if you want to be on His team. And so I'm on His team. I'm fully in. I'm all in, and I can't wait to see where things go from here. But so that's my story. Following up on the strong cards. Who else is going to get this card pulled for you later on? Would love to pull a card for you if you're interested. And if you ever want to meet up over breakfast or anything like that to share your story, or hear a little bit more about my journey and my story, let me know. Love to meet up. All right, so that's about it. First take.